So I think we ran into this issue last year. I don't know. I'm not allowed to talk about potential transactions that could take place later on in the summer. In the event that you make a trade or you're involved in a trade, we're not able to.
Sorry about that.
Did you get that covered? You're buying me time because I'm trying to figure out how to explain this. Thank you. Yeah, what I was actually going to say was that anybody that's involved in a draft day trade can't talk about the trade until that trade is consummated. So I'll have to be pretty vague on some of the things that we talk about. I don't know how else to say that. They gave us some stuff, the league, that they'll probably send it out. All right, sorry about that. I just want to say before we get started that today's a very every draft day is a special day for our evaluators, the people that crisscross the country and the globe, and they put in an unbelievable amount of time preparing for the draft. And I've got a lot of respect for everybody involved in that. So, them, and then obviously all the different people in basketball operations that play a role in the draft process, from our medical group, our strategy, analytics, obviously evaluation, coaching. Everybody plays a hand in these things, and we culminate that today, and then we start on the next draft tomorrow, quite frankly. So, but many, many thanks to all the people that contribute to these evenings and prepare us with the information that we have to try to make the best decisions we can. So with that, I'll allow you guys to ask me any questions.
So even though can't talk about things,
was there anything particular that you were looking for heading into the draft?
Yeah, so I think the way we've always approached the draft is we're always looking to create value for the organization and get the most value from the opportunities that we have to pick. I think we've also shown at different points in time to try to take a long view and give yourself the most opportunity to have the most success. But every one of these is different, and we try to just go off the board and take the next player that's there.
So when you talk about the long view, how do you balance the situation of trying to look big picture, trying to look down the road, and having two all-stars in their prime and trying to build a winning team around them?
Well, I mean, there's so many different ways that you can that you add to your team, and this is really the beginning of the off season. So when you look at our team that we have returning, from the guys that were on the floor at the end of the season, we've got 2 guys that are free agents and potentially 3 with Nerlens. So from that rotation, and we have got a group of guys, younger guys like Diallo, Burton, and Nader that all at different points in time during the season contributed and helped us win actually some pretty big games during that period of time. So I look at the off season as kind of a longer period of time. We sat here last year. We had PG was a free agent. Jeremy was a free agent. Nerlens wasn't in the picture at the time. Dennis Schroeder was, still 75 days away from being on the team. So this is just the beginning part of it. But, we're going to look to try to balance out the team, throughout the summer.
Today didn't address the need for outside shooting. What is your plan going forward to address that?
Just like what we talked about before and at the end of the season, I think we're going to need some internal growth and internal development just based on where we are and what available resources and tools we have from a team building standpoint. And we'll certainly have some opportunities to have conversations with people after July 1st about how they may be able to round out the group. But nothing's really changed between the last time we visited and now relative to just our ability to take some strides internally. It's going to be really important. And if you look at the history of the draft, in the 20s, there's a 40% chance or so that you can get a bench player in those areas most of the time, let alone someone that you're going to draft that's going to come in and play major minutes on a team like ours. So most of that work probably is going to happen, from here on out.
All that said, did you have a plan to address shooting in the draft, but maybe at the time that you were able to pick up the players you might have drafted?
No, the plan is always to try to take the best player, that's on the board at the time. And so, every player brings different things to the table. And like I said, at the end of the season, those are for sure, things that we're going to look to address. But we have, one, the most controllable is our ability internally to improve in those areas. And then number two, explore all these different options that we have in front of us, through the rest of the off season, which runs until September, to figure out how to be as creative as we can. And, I feel like we're just kind of getting started on that. And I think it will be a pretty methodical process just because of the type of off season I think the NBA is kind of wading into. And, we'll look at all the different options available to us, and then we'll have a team on the floor for September.
Sam, there's been a lot of reporting on, you guys reportedly wanted to lower your tax bill or lower some of the spending. Has something changed organizationally in terms of like what you have to work with, in terms of the money and what your mission is, building this team while also having to manage the bill?
Well, I mean, of course, I think when you're looking at any of these types of decisions, like finances are going to play a role in that. There's no question about that. Last season, obviously, in order to keep Paul George in Oklahoma City and in order to keep Jeremy Grant in Oklahoma City, we're going to have to be pretty aggressive. I think any team in that situation, to be able to keep Paul George, who's an MVP caliber player, like, you're going to do what you have to do that. Going forward, I said this, from the outset, where we are right now, we're not going to be able to sustain that over a really long period of time. And we're certainly going to look at ways that we can, build the best team we possibly can. But when you get to this point, your resources and your tools are going to be limited. And that's going to be kind of our job to figure out, what the options are and how to put the best team on the floor that we can.
Sam, earlier you mentioned the last time that we got to talk to you, and at that time you were saying you were kind of really hesitant to have a reactionary, thoughts about the season. I'm just curious, in the intervening few weeks, have you had any more thoughts or gained any more kind of information or insight into last season and what you're looking forward to in the rest of this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely things that we can do better. I think we address that. At the same time, I think you've got a tremendous opportunity in front of us. We have a tremendous opportunity in front of us as a team because of the continuity that we do have. When you look across the league right now, I don't know what the percentage is of the league that are free agents, but it's a large percentage of them. As I said earlier, returning our core players that are under contract, and I feel like that group of guys has a chance to be really good. If you're asking, now with the way the Western Conference looks or the league looks in general, I couldn't even venture a guess, kind of how that stacks up because we're so far from the off season really ending. You know what I mean? So every team's gonna do what they can to come back better. We're the same, and as I said earlier, it's a pretty methodical aspect, and there's certain points in time and ways that you can get better. And tonight was one part of that, and then there'll be several others going forward.
Obviously, tonight is a focus leading up to it, but where are you guys in terms of rounding out a coaching staff?
Yeah, so obviously we've had some change there. We're really happy for the guys that have moved on. They got great opportunities, and we want to be as supportive as we can in those situations. And Billy, obviously, and myself talked about those those things relative to the chances that those guys had to improve their situations. At the same time, that opens up opportunity for some change on the existing group, and Billy's talking to a lot of different people, and I think it's great. He's being really methodical about how he goes about how he wants to fill the group out, and as I said earlier, we don't start playing until September. So taking some time with that I think is healthy to make sure he's looked at, and we've looked at all the different options that there are.
Is that something he does, or a combination of you, him, front office?
Like he bounces names off me. I might throw him a few to just talk to or think about. We have some people internally that will always look at that as well. But I would say that he's got a good handle on that type of stuff, and I might give him some opinions and things of that nature. But for the most part, we've always been kind of on the same page, and he's got to feel good about the group he's working with.
Mark Dagnall, because Darko that came up from the 66ers at the time, was the D-League team.
Yeah.
Dagnall, like you said, you mentioned internally, you have had people that you've been interested in or mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious if Dagnall is on that list or...
Yeah. So no, that's right. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, no. So anytime we have openings and things like that, we'll always look internal. I think that's one of the things that we've traditionally done. That doesn't mean that we always go that direction, but there's a lot of different positions than the ones that people might see, like on the front of the bench or even on the back of the bench. We've got development positions, video positions. We obviously have the blue group, and that that development group and that group of people that kind of are behind the scenes have done an unbelievable job during the draft process. And we're in great shape, I think, for summer league and all those types of things, which really affords Billy the time to be selective about who he wants to add to the main group. But Mark's a bright coach. We're great. We're glad that he's a part of the organization, and if he's a part of that group going forward, great. If not, he'll do a great job with where he is currently with the Blue.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, is there an ideal time frame for when you want a coaching staff kind of set in stone, or is, like you said, it is if you have enough time?
No, I think it's basically taking your time to find the right combination of people, and then there's also people that might be working for other teams or things of that nature, and there's processes that you have to go through to get there, and then it's no different than I think putting together a team. So you're trying to figure out all the different combinations that are available so you can get the best group that you can. But no, I don't think I think the time is basically more or less the, when that group kind of presents itself. And we feel really good about the coverage that we have currently with kind of the development period of time that we're in right now. And that also adds great opportunity for some of the other people in the building to step up during this period of time. They've done a great job.
And with Paul's surgery, can you kind of give us an idea of how that is going to progress? And with the surgery itself, was it about what y'all expected?
Yeah.
The doctors?
Yeah, no, everything, everything went, there's no surprises or anything of that nature. Timeline-wise, we're going to update you when we get around camp. I think we'll have a better feel for that. Predicting that far out right now, I don't think we'd be. I think we're better served making sure we have the most information possible, and then we'll make give you the best feel we can at that point in time. But he's doing well, and he's going to make a full recovery.
What kind of things can he do at this point? Is he pretty limited?
It's still pretty early, so it's mostly. I mean, he can do like other body areas, but obviously, having both of those things worked on is going to limit him a little bit. But his body could use the rest too. Normally at this time, a lot of players that are playing heavy loads and things like that, they're not doing a whole lot right away. You really kind of have to get away from it, let your body recover, and I think mentally too is important to do that. So. I don't think we're missing out. He's not going to have the off season that he's had in the past, but he's going to be healthier, all around. when he does get back on the floor.
What about Andre? How's he doing?
Doing well. He continues to make progress. I think, we've taken a real conservative approach, toward the end of the season, knowing that we'd have this period of time in the off season to kind of build up some momentum. So he's doing well. He's training down in Texas. He's got a good group of people with him. Our guys and girls are, in and out monitoring that. I saw some video clips of him the other day that were really impressive. And, I just think he's itching to get back out on the court. So, but yeah, he's doing well.
Sam, back to the draft. We can watch college games and see talking heads and highlights, but when it comes to you guys getting to know these players as individuals and having interviews, I guess I'm just curious, what are you looking for when you have those moments to talk to these players and really try to get to know them?
I don't know how to summarize that. I think it's basically just trying to understand where each individual person is on their kind of on their own personal journey. How they see themselves, what inspires them, what makes them tick. I think one of the things that's important is it's not just like picking players. I think it's understanding, where sometimes the fits can be organizationally, how you might be able to enhance the development of that particular player. And in order to do that, I think you have to understand the mindset of that player, their history, their story, so to speak, and if that assimilates well with organizationally where you want to be. I'm always blown away by the I guess I would call them kids that we get to meet through this process. Some really, really great interviews and touching stories and really insightful things. I think that's one thing about this is that, you really can't go into it with any bias. You really have to judge for yourself, your own sense of the person. And, again, I think a big part of the draft is not seeing things for what they are, but seeing things for what they potentially can be. And in order to do that, I think you have to understand your own context, as to what environment the player's coming into and if they'll thrive in that environment. It's at the end of the day, though, I wish I could tell you there's a real, science to it. I think we're really just trying to shift the odds to, trying to find players that can play in the NBA for more than a couple of years. And, obviously the higher up in the draft you are, the more likely that is. When you're back in the 20s, the odds are, dwindling at that point. And so any type of information you can try to find to try to tip the scales, a big part of that is trying to understand, the potential pathway that player might have in your organization, success you may have had at different times with players like that, or mistakes, along the way that you may have made. So it's a lot of things all wrapped in one, and that's why we've tried to have as many different people working on this as we can, and try to funnel it all down to make the most educated guess that we're making. And that's what it ultimately is. It's a guess. So, and again, a lot of it comes down to some random things as to why players are extremely successful in one place and maybe wouldn't have been, or but this is the starting point for these players. It's just like they're all lining up on a starting line, and it's going to be a long race for those guys to determine that.
Sorry.
No problem.
Is the challenge in judging these guys changing, or do you feel like it could continue to change as guys go from high school to overseas or G League, or just, you've always been evaluating guys in overseas leagues, but now you've got some young guys that maybe are doing some unconventional things.
Yes.
Does that change
Yeah,
that?
so we had a situation like that. Ferguson was an interesting one for us. Obviously, he was, kind of removed to a degree. And sometimes that can alter kind of the way that you look at the evaluation. Some ways, like lack of information can sometimes be a helpful thing relative to, where a player might be projected or not. But one thing about the NBA is that it's become there's just a lot of different moving parts to this league now, and I think you can see that just based on the way the league is covered. I think creativity and how you assess value becomes really important. And you got to, as I said before, you may not have as much information as you like, but you've got to at some point, put that together and make a decision. And for us, we've always tried to focus on value creation, and I don't think that's really been I would look at Diallo last year, came out in high school, did that kind of declared for the draft, went back. We did get to interview him before he went back to Kentucky, so we had a little nice feel for him there, and played on a really good team at Kentucky. Maybe didn't get as much opportunity, because they're so well versed there, but the strides that he made from where we got him last summer, and he actually wasn't able to play right away because we did a trade on draft night, but he made great strides, and I think he's on pace to have a really good summer so far from what I've seen. But I think you got to take a long view with some of those guys because there's limited information at times with them.
Sam, from your perspective, how do you view the concept of load management? So why, how do you view that growing trend?
I don't know how to, I'm not dodging the question. I know it's going to be a hot button issue. I think it all comes down to how we're defining that. You know what I mean? I think it's probably more of a league issue than anything. But you got to work in concert with the players, obviously, and make sure that everyone's on the same page with the management of health and wellness, et cetera, et cetera. But how the league is going to view that, I don't know. I'm kind of waiting to hear their point of view on that. But we're always looking at those things and monitoring those things, having conversations with our players, having a plan, relative to that. But there have been some unique cases, and every one of those I think is different. So painting it with a broad brush, I think, is kind of a dangerous thing to do, and that's the reason I'm hesitant to give you a whole lot more on that. I just don't know how they're going to look at that.
Sam, is Terrence going to play summer league?
No.
Is there a particular reason why?
Most guys that are going into the stage of his career usually don't. I don't have the precedent of the history of Thunder players. I'm sure there have been players that have done that, but as a starter, generally speaking, those guys don't do that. We feel really good about where he is in his development, and think he's taking a big jump from year one to year two. But that's not going to be something that he's doing. Yep.
I was just looking at salaries of teams like Golden State, Toronto. I mean, they spent a ton of money this year. Can you be an inexpensive team and compete for an NBA championship?
Well, I think it all comes down to timeline. I mean, the cycle of your team. The reality is that market value, for players in free agency, and certainly players at the, when they're quote unquote at the maximum level salary. It's all relative to timeline. One of the reasons why we're in a position where we can do what we've done, as of late, is because in the first 7 or 8 years of our existence in Oklahoma City, we were able to, find a way to win a lot of games, and with a relatively young team. And that's really given us the opportunity to come to this situation in order to elongate the run that we've had. And but you know that once players start getting into a certain tier, a certain age, and what they command, it's going to be an expensive proposition. And you know, when in the summer of 2016, you know, when we continued on the path and you know, re-signed Russell the following summer, we extended him, then re-signed him. Like, you know that the team ultimately is going to be expensive in the event that, you know, you can pair Russell with some other players. And so that's just kind of a timeline issue to me. Every team's going to face that at some point if they have a level of sustained success. And, you know, that's just kind of where we are at this point in time. So to answer your question, absolutely you can have a competitive team. It all comes down to kind of the timeline of your players and, you know, where those dollars are going.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
I've already written it.